contradicted what was in the newspaper. So as I see it now, and Charlie, if you could correct me if I'm incorrect, that all adult entertainment centers in Norfolk will require a site-specific zoning amendment, and none of them are grandfathered. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, the first part is my understanding that if a new establishment was to want to set up an adult entertainment center, that it would definitely have to come to council for approval. I'm under the understanding that the two current sites that used to run adult entertainment could still operate. And I don't know if Councillor Oliver, if your interpretation is the same. So I'd be interested in your comment.
Mr. Chairman, I was listening to hear what the mayor said. My interpretation, my understanding, and obviously we're going to need to get further clarification, was because neither of the previously established operations were in operation at the time our new zoning bylaw came into effect. They don't constitute sort of legal non-conforming, and therefore they're not grandfathered, and they would have to apply for a rezoning should someone wish to open a new establishment in either one of those locations. So we need to get clarification perhaps, because I could very well be wrong.
No, and I am not just totally sure. Mr. Chair, I would say that Councillor Oliver may be correct. It's been some time since we discussed this. I will get back to you on that as to whether the Norfolk Inn and the Malibu Club could just simply start up again, should someone. And just on that note, for committee's information, the court hearing on the ownership or the challenge of the ownership on the Norfolk Inn is scheduled for 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at the courthouse on Highway 3. And of course, you're all aware that the Malibu Club has changed hands again and is slated for renovation / redevelopment. It's a serious owner that is wishing to move ahead with rental or apartment units on that corner. So I'm thinking Norfolk County, by the looks of it, probably will be adult entertainment free from here on in. But I will get back to you, Mr. Chair, on that specific issue. And Councillor Oliver, Mr. Chair, is absolutely right. Both of those buildings at the time of the passing of this were not in operation at the time. So I probably have a little more research to do, and I shall do it. Thank you.
Do you want to do it, or do you want me to?
I'll do it.
Okay.
And I will send you an email.
Okay, well, I think we'll follow it up then, because that part was gray to me. I mean, certainly even more gray after the previous article on it, but the point is whether the adult entertainment is a redundant bylaw, the one that we had been working on for half a dozen years and that we were pushing to have brought forward. If the zoning issue is solved, all of those issues by making it site-specific, including the ones that have been in operation before, I mean, we don't need it. But if they have been grandfathered, I mean, we might still need it. So, okay, well, we'll put it on as business arising for next meeting, and thank you for doing that. Item D was a letter to Mayor Luke from the OPP dated April 27th. Any questions or comments on that one? I don't have any, except one of the paragraphs suggests that there's a spreadsheet available that shows all of the estimates for the 323 OPP build communities. That's not the case that I can find. And I would have been interested in seeing where we stood, because in the previous model, we were paying the second most in the province. I know we're way, way down the list now, but I would have been curious to know how far down the list. But that's not what they gave us. All they gave was summary numbers for 3 years. So all of this will be stuff that just has to play out in the fall, and we'll let it play and see where it goes when we have to work on the new billing statement or the reconciliation for 2016 and 2017. If we could move on to E, the email from member Oliver dated May 4th. Jim, do you want to take that one?
I will. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Actually, both sides of that sheet are relevant to this. It was an inquiry from a property owner or a resident on Prospect Street in Port Dover again regarding traffic speed. And as you can see, Councillor Wells dealt with the General Manager of Public Works, and she reminded him and us, I guess, that we can't use stop signs with the purpose of controlling traffic and speed. So Councillor Wells just asked me to bring it to the board, which I am this morning, and I recall we've had speed spy, and perhaps staff will speak to us about it, Mr. Chairman, whether we could redeploy speed spy or what they feel is the solution. So,
Joe, could you remind us what the speed spy results have been on Prospect?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We ran a previous speed spy study in February, and there was no real identified concern. And I ran a second speed spy study just within the last 2 weeks, shortly after this letter came out. And again, of the 1,294 vehicles that were captured, only 17 were shown going in excess of 20 kilometers an hour on Prospect, which is less than 2% of the total number of vehicles. So it's not speeding's not a huge issue in that area. I believe that it's probably more traffic volume with the new construction, especially out on Concession 2 and Cockshut. Definitely there's more traffic using Prospect. We continue to do speed enforcement there as time permits. We always will. But a focused patrol, we won't be creating one for that area.
Do you have any more questions on that, Jim? So the OPP position would be that anything like a speed bump would be just counterproductive in terms of vehicle flow through Port Dover, given all the construction?
I can't really comment on the use of speed bumps in the area on the roads. That would be something that perhaps the county traffic managers could answer. But I do know that according to the speed spy, there's not an excessive speeding problem there, and we'll continue to do enforcement. But I would suggest that due to the construction as well as the new construction of houses, that it's a traffic volume issue. Is that there's just more traffic in that area, creating more noise and perhaps perception of speeding.
So is it, go ahead, Charlie.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Speed bumps, I get requests from time to time, primarily in subdivisions where people speed. The one recently I had was in the Inn subdivision in Waterford. I hate speed bumps as a means to slow people down. There are places where they are used. I can't think of any public road in Norfolk County that has a speed bump. Somebody can point it out. I'd like to know where it is. And the problem is, if you start, where do you stop? So I just want to comment that speed bumps aren't the answer. I think when I read this email from Cindy, and I've been corresponding with, it used to be a quiet residential street, but not anymore. With the development now that has been rezoned up there with more in the northeast corner off the Cockshut and off of Prospect area, right through to Tisdale Road. it's going to be even a less quieter. You know, people struggle with change. Wherever subdivisions expand, traffic patterns, traffic volume, it's tough sometimes that I bought here and live on a quiet road and then suddenly 500 more homes have been added and now it's no longer a quiet neighborhood. No, it's not. It'll continue to even increase traffic volume as more development take places, and specifically on the west side and east side and the north side. Well, stupid, I'm not going to see many developments south of Port Dover get wet. So anyhow, I can't see speed bumps, Mr. Chair, as being the solution.
So so is it the board's wish that either Maureen or myself follow up with Cindy and say that we've measured 1,294 vehicles in the last 2 weeks and 17 have been speeding, of which that would be one per day? Jim?
Actually, Mr. Chairman, now that you mentioned it, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, I was planning to just communicate back to Councillor Wells, but obviously this property owner deserves to know that we have dealt with it here at this board as well as council having dealt with it. So if you're prepared or would ask Maureen to do that, we've got her email. I think that would be a very good suggestion. I would appreciate it.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Any other questions or comments on Prospect, John?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just in line with this issue brought forward in this letter, one of the things we've done at Detachment is we've made application under provincial proceeds of crime funding for the purchase of 4 radar speed signs, which are actually overt signs that show the speeds of vehicles as drivers come through a certain area. We recognize the speed spy technology is effective in covertly measuring speed, but what we're hoping for is to have something that'll trigger drivers to immediately change their driving manner. So that grant application went in on the 31st of April, so I'm just waiting to hear back on that. And that was for 4 radar speed signs for approximately $25,000 of funding. So.
Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And John, thank you very much for that. We've talked about that, I know, around this board as long as I've been on the board. And I recall one being used effectively, and I think perhaps owned by the policing committee or Turkey Point property owners, used in Turkey Point. And I'll tell you as a driver,
Yes.
when I go by one of those and I see that instead of doing 50, I'm doing 65 or perish the
85.
thought 75, it does. It hits you between the eyes. So I'm really pleased that you've done it. I hope we get some, if not all 4. And I think that'll be a real asset for the community.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, hopefully we have success there, and I think the great part about the signs too is they're portable and we can use them throughout the county depending on where we have problems. So I think it's great for the entire community, so here's hoping.
Good, well, thank you. Any other questions on Prospect Street? If we could move on to the second email from member Oliver with respect to St. Andrew Street. Jim, maybe if you want to do that one too.
I will, Mr. Chair, and thank you. It is, again, self-explanatory, and I'll tell you what makes me think this one is perhaps even a bit more urgent. The other night at Council, Councillor Wells, again, was talking about St. Andrew Street, and apparently there had been another accident recently. I don't know whether it was one that was reportable to OPP or not, but he referenced, I think the mayor will back me up on this, he referenced the fact that there have been some accidents on St. Andrew, whether it's due to speeding or other concerns, I don't know, but maybe staff could comment on this one too, if they would.
Joe?
Yes, through the chair. So on May 9th to the 11th, ran a speed spy study on St. Andrew Street. Eastbound traffic, 454 vehicles were recorded with an average speed of 43 kilometers an hour. The 85th percentile was at 52 kilometers an hour. Of those 454 vehicles, 10 of them were recorded going in excess of 20 kilometers an hour. And for westbound traffic, 743 vehicles were recorded with an average speed of 42 kilometers an hour. The 85th percentile was 50 kilometers an hour. And out of those 743 vehicles, 18 of them were recorded going in excess of 20 kilometers an hour. So if there's a higher traffic volume on St. Andrews due to the construction, which can also contribute to more accidents. What we did find, though, was of those that were traveling well over the speed limit, they were between the hours of 5 a.m. and 8 and 8 o'clock and midnight. So I have requested the officers working Port Dover to target St. Andrews during those specific times. That seems to be the key times, going to work and perhaps in the evening running around. But those were the speed spy results.
Any further comment, Jim?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for that, Staff Sergeant Joe. And that is a 50-kilometer street, isn't it? I assume. Or,
It's 50, and there's also a portion that's 40.
a portion that's 40, yeah. Yeah.
And it has the, the split level
Yes. Yeah.
in it, which tends to slow traffic down as well.
Well, my suggestion would be that we respond to Larry and Colleen Butcher exactly the same way, that we'd either get Maureen or myself, and perhaps if you can get the exact information from Joe afterwards so we don't make any mistakes on the numbers, that we could reply and say that we thought about it and dealt with it. And sadly, there's a lot more traffic there. Jim?
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, if Maureen could make a note, maybe CCing Councillor Wells when you do correspond, so that the resident knows that he did address their concern or attempt to, and so he knows that we've monitored it and that sort of thing. Thank you.
Have there been more accidents there, or?
I don't have the data on that, but just from hearing the calls for service and reviewing them, I don't believe that there's any increase or significantly that I'm aware of.
Any other comments? Charlie?
Well, the good news is Phase 3 and final phase of Main Street will be over soon. It's been 3 long years. It has not been easy. St. Andrew Street, as you know, is the new Main Street in Port Dover. The cars have to get up to number 6 and over the bridge somehow. Of course, the other way is down St. George, but it's not, I'm sure the east side is. So, I'm counting the days until everything will be back in order there. So it had to be done. So we'll get through it. And then appreciate your response to this situation here. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, if we could have 5A to 5F approved as information. Moved by Jim, second by Dave. All in favor? So if we could go on to the inspector's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Overtime 217 year-to-date, dollars spent is $83,183.19. And that's down from 2016, which was $118,230.27. For April, we had 520 hours auxiliary policing. In terms of tributes, we received a letter of appreciation for officers that were involved in the sudden death investigation from a member of a family. Crime Stoppers activity, year to date, there have been 152 anonymous tips received. And that doesn't include other administrative calls related to Crime Stoppers. A couple highlights in terms of presentations and meetings. They participated in meetings with the Tillsonburg Lions, Tillsonburg Lioness, our OPP alcohol forum. The Gala committee's been active, and they're currently working on getting the golf tournament together. And we had our annual appreciation luncheon on the 20th of April at the Greens of Renton. We had approximately 50 persons attend. And the award recipients were Winmar for business, Stan Morris for civilian awards, and Constable Eric Genkler for law enforcement award.
Yeah, Jim?
Thanks. Just before we leave Crime Stoppers, You briefly mentioned the Spring Gala, and I do just want to say, first of all, a thank you to Mayor Luke for allowing me to go on his behalf to the Spring Gala in Jarvis. That was the first time I'd attended the Crime Stoppers Gala, and it was a very, very nice event, well attended, good fundraising. Our inspector was there as well as the inspector from Haldeman Detachment, and it was a great event for Crime Stoppers, and I appreciated being there.
Go ahead, John.
And to page 26,
Just a sec before we get there. Are there any more questions with respect to overtime? Because we'd be jumping a whole bunch of pages here.
oh, yeah.
I have one if no one else does, and is that, I can see that there's been a big improvement year over year from 2016 to 2017. Would there be a reasonable expectation on our part that it is more under control now because of having a full roster of sergeants and more people not on accommodation? Because obviously we're pleased to see that the dollar figure's down and we're pleased to see that the hour figure's down, but I guess on a go-forward basis, we want to know whether we should expect that it is still going to be more under control.
Well, Mr. Chair, hopefully it will continue to be. I think one of the significant contributors is we haven't had a major incident, which is obviously led to a reduction in our operational overtime. I mean, that's beyond our control, but we are working to address staffing issues on the platoons, and we've taken certain measures within the detachment to bolster our platoon strength. And the fact that we now have our 2 sergeants' positions filled and some consistency in management certainly helped us as well.
So bottom line would be yes.
Optimistic.
Any other questions or comments on overtime? Any questions or comments on before we jump to page 26, on any of that information? Seeing none, I have one. If you go to page 25, where it says criminal code and provincial statute charges laid, and I note that it's a month in arrears, but the HTA charges are down considerably year over year, as are criminal code non-traffic. And I'm interested in whether there is any reason for that. And specifically, I'm interested in whether there's been any pressure put on the police by anyone due to crime, due to lags in trial dates, to not lay charges.
Mr. Chair, there hasn't been any pressure put on us in terms of charges due to concerns about delays. It's business as usual as far as that goes. I think one of the trends you'll see as we go forward, and I do the statistics, is we've had a significant drop in occurrences related to criminal offenses, particularly as they relate to property crimes as well as violent crimes, which is certainly a contributor to the reduction in criminal code charges.
So it's specifically a good news story, is what you're telling me, that it's not that we're out there less or not prosecuting things that should be prosecuted. It's strictly we have less incidences of HTA violations and we have less criminal code.
At this point in time, that's the trend. That trend can change, obviously, dependent, but in particular, especially if we look at April, you'll see the trend is generally downward.
Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, John, if you want to jump to page 26.
And Mr. Chair, in terms of all violent crime, for April, we had a total of 29 occurrences, which falls within our expected range and is just up slightly from April of 2016. In terms of assaults, in April, we had a total of 21, which is within projected range and up slightly from 2016, where we had 16 in the month of April. Domestic disturbances, we had a total of 47 in the month of April, which is actually slightly above our projected range, and certainly up from last year in April when we had 29. In terms of property crime, all property crime, we had a total of 74 occurrences, which is well below our projected range of 102, which would be the minimum projection, and certainly down significantly from April of last year, where we had 102 occurrences. Break and enters for April, we had a total of 7, which is again well below our projected minimum of 11, and on par with what we had in April of 2016. Fraud occurrences, we had 15, which is within our projected range, and down again from 2016 April, where we had 22. Mischief occurrences in April, we had a total of 11, which is well below our projected minimum of 29, and significantly below 2016 number of 32. Theft from motor vehicles, in April, we had a total of 7. Again, that's below our minimum projection of 10, and down from April 2016 when we had 9. Theft of motor vehicles, in April we had 1, which is again below our projected minimum of 3, and below April 2016 when we had 3. Theft under 5,000 occurrences, we had a total of 35, which is again below our projected minimum of 37, and below what we had in 2016 as well, when we had 37. Illicit drug occurrences for April, we had a total of 3, again below our projected minimum of 5, and down significantly from April 2016 when we had 7. In terms of collisions, we had a total of 62 collisions in April, which is right at our minimum projection, and we were down from 71 in April of 2016. Property damage collisions, we had a total of 47, which is again at our minimum projected number of 47, and is below the 52 that we had in April of 2016. Personal injury accidents, we had a total of 14, which is within projected range, and down slightly from April 2016, where we had 16. And in the month of April, we did have 1 fatal motor vehicle collision. 911 calls, April we had 128, which is well below our projected minimum of 158, and is down significantly from 2016, where we had 162 in the same month. Alarm calls, we had a total of 47, which is within our projected range, and down slightly from last year when we had 51 in the same time period. Impaired operation for April, we had 6. That's within our projected target range, and down slightly from 2016 where we had 8. Mental Health Act calls. In April we had a total of 44, which exceeds our maximum projection of 38, and which is actually up from 2016 when we had 40. In terms of foot patrol hours in April, we had a total of 432, and that's up slightly from 2016 when we had 418. And in terms of school visits, we had a total of 64. And again, the data on charges we had already referred to isn't up to date yet, and still refers to March, where we had 255 speeding charges laid. For April, we had 4 roadside screening tests administered, 7 ADLS suspensions issued, 2 3-day suspensions issued. We conducted 94 ride checks and 50 ride seatbelt checks. And I'll refer to Staff Varga for an update on our focus patrols.
Thank you. In regards to Focus Patrol, we have a Focus Patrol ongoing right now in regards to a property within the county that may be subject to a protest. We've closed the cottage break and enter Focus Patrol that ran from December through till April. And as a result of that Focus Patrol, 280 and a quarter hours were dedicated to cottage, patrolling for cottage break and enters and preventing them. They consisted of vehicle and foot patrol. During that time, we did have, though, 12 reported break and enters, which took place mainly in Turkey Point and Port Ryerson. It's believed that most of these were committed by the same person. We had a DNA hit regarding a break and enter in Port Ryerson, which was matched to a known offender. That offender was arrested in Espanola in possession of stolen snowmobiles from Norfolk and Haldeman County. And he's also a suspect in several break-and enters up north as well. Currently, the investigation's ongoing. A warrant has been issued for his arrest in regards to Norfolk County's incident. However, right now the suspect's pending possible deportation back to his original country of Kurdistan, so we're continuing that investigation. As well, during the Focus Patrol, several traffic and liquor violations were noted and dealt with accordingly, as well as several suspicious youth were located, and several insecure outbuildings were also found. In regards to traffic Focus Patrol, we currently have Focus Patrol ongoing in conjunction with the Highway Safety Division out of London for Highway 3 between Simcoe and Delhi, and that started April 1st and runs to June 30th. And to date, Norfolk County officers alone have dedicated 129 and a half hours to that Focus Patrol, issuing 32 charges. There's also another traffic Focus Patrol in conjunction with the Highway Safety Division for Highway 24 from Simcoe to Brant County. And so far, Norfolk County officers have dedicated 191 and a quarter hours to that patrol and have issued 80 charges. There's an ongoing Focus Patrol in regards to farm safety. It's been generated in response to issues concerning the safe operation of farm equipment on Norfolk County roads now that spring's here and everyone's out and about working. We conducted a Focus Patrol on West Street in regards to speeding. It has just closed on May 22nd. I don't have the results of that, but I will have for the next meeting. A Focus Patrol was conducted in April regarding in response to complaints of vehicles speeding along St. George Street in Port Dover and failing to stop for stop signs. 24 and 3/4 hours were dedicated to traffic enforcement there, and 7 charges were laid in regards to various violations. We ran a Focus Patrol in Delhi on Pine Street in regards to a complaint of speeding along Pine Street. No violations were observed at the time of the Focus Patrols, but I believe the increased presence probably slowed people down there, and we'll continue to monitor that situation. In regards to Duncombe Road in Waterford, we conducted Focus Patrol there in regards to speeding. Again, no violations were observed, but again, it was newly created, the 40-kilometer-an-hour zone, so our presence, and there were several warnings issued. So we'll continue to monitor that, and if it picks up again, we'll deal with it accordingly. And I just want to, I believe at the last meeting, I didn't report on the March Zero Tolerance, Zero Collision campaign, which we ran the 29th to the 31st of March, targeting 3 different locations. One was Highway 24 between Simcoe and Thompson Road, Queensway East between Norfolk Street South, or Norfolk Street and Ireland Road, and also Highway 59 between County Road 21 South. During that campaign, a total of 51 charges were laid, 34 speeding, 1 for a stop sign, 7 for other HTA offenses, 1 impaired charge was laid, 1 careless, 2 distracted driving, 1 suspended drive, 4 for no insurance cards, and there were 7 collisions during that time period. And in April, we ran a Zero Tolerance, Zero Collision campaign from, well, it was April 12th and 13th, and we targeted Norfolk Street South, Highway 24 to St. John's Road East, St. John's Road East from Highway 24 to Highway 6 and the surrounding areas, as well as Blue Line Road from Thompson Road West to Radical Road, surrounding areas. During that 2-day campaign, 98 charges were laid, 81 for speeding, 6 violations in regards to commercial motor vehicles, 1 stop sign violation, 2 contraband tobacco violations, 2 stunt driving violations, 1 Highway Traffic Act other, 1 for drive no license, 2 for having no insurance card, and 2 for expired validation. And currently we have several speed spy studies underway, but I shall not mention those at this point. I'll report that on the next meeting. That's everything I have in regards to focus patrols.
Questions for Joe? Jim? Joe?
Through the chair, we have deployed the ATVs to the trail system. They were out on the long weekend as well as Easter weekend. They were out, and we'll continue to have them out. The bicycle patrol, we're having a little issue in that we don't have as many, due to staff turnover and whatnot, we don't have as many bicycle trained officers. And we're trying to get more trained, but that's an issue that we have to work with the training branch, and we're just waiting for them to hold another course.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yes, we've been provided keys to the gates for emergency access.
Mr. Chair, I wasn't on the mic here, but yeah, thank you very much for that. I did have another question, and it's now left my mind, so it may come back, and I'll ask it.
Other questions for Staff Sergeant Dave?
You, Mr. Chair, just to comment on the Duncan Road situation. I live on Duncan Road. It was obvious that street signs were, speed signs were put up almost immediately as we talked about it at this table. I did see a Focus Patrol cruiser sitting there after the event, and just to say I was quite impressed at how quickly that all seemed to come together. And maybe, obviously, Joe, you drove that, and thanks to you.
Other questions for Joe? Other questions on the inspector's report? Other questions on any other subject to the inspector? Acting inspector, staff sergeant, depending on what pay grade you get today. I just have one question, which is a bit off topic, but the police have been promoting a new device over the weekend that attaches to vehicles. The way I understand it, it is to eliminate high-speed chases, but it's a trial project and there were only 3 of them, and the pictures online showed it being attached to a vehicle, but I guess my question was, how far away can you get this projectile, and are we part of the study?
Mr. Chair, I'll field that question. I actually attended the Ontario Police College during the training for the use of that vehicle. And yes, I'm happy to say that Norfolk County is part of the trial for that particular vehicle. There's 7 vehicles that are being deployed in West Region, and one of the, I'll call it a tracking vehicle, is to be shared between Brant, Haldeman, and Norfolk for pilot project purposes. The optimum distance to be away from the vehicle to be tracked when the device is deployed is between 14 and 21 feet.
So you really got to be close.
Yes. The device is about the size of a water glass, and there's a really, really sticky substance on the one end, and it shoots by compressed air. The driver deploys it, and it shoots out, and it'll stick to just about everything. And then from there, the device, it's GPSed, and our communication system can track it no matter where it goes.
But from an operational perspective, it would be very difficult to get to that distance behind that vehicle, and then you have to break off pursuit?
Immediately once it's deployed, that you're going to break off pursuit. The hope is that you do not have to enter into a pursuit to deploy the device. Obviously, there's several different pacing or following methods prior to entering into a pursuit, where if you know the vehicle, that the suspect vehicle is ahead of you, and perhaps they don't know that you're behind them, or they're just playing coy, you can get close enough to deploy it. I don't want to get into too much operational wise, but there's the whole use of the devices is hopefully to prevent a pursuit from starting, from having to do that. So there is different protocols to deploy it.
Well, I'm personally delighted that we're part of the study, because that was where I was going with the question, was how I was going to get me one of those, you know.
We have one officer trained in detachment to use it. They've trained one officer in each of the select detachments, and once we receive it, we'll have them out there, and hopefully we'll have a successful deployment and a successful track.
Great. Any questions on this, Jim? Okay, go ahead.
I did recall the second thing I wanted to ask about. Sooner or later it comes back. Staff Sergeant, when you were giving us the results of the, I think you described it as zero tolerance, zero accident project, and obviously some high statistics, but I just want to be sure I understand, in the case of what you describe as zero tolerance, does that mean our officers would or could randomly stop any vehicle or follow any vehicle for any purpose, or what motivates the particular vehicle in question to be of interest, if you like, to the officer under a zero tolerance project?
A Highway Traffic Act violation or a criminal violation, yes.
Right.
That's what we're targeting.
Okay, so and in that instance, again, and you'll not tell me if you don't think it's appropriate, but anything above the posted speed limit could potentially be a reason for stopping the vehicle in that case? Because those numbers seem pretty high, Mr. Chair, over that short period of time, so.
Correct. If you're above the posted speed limit, that would be a violation.
Any other questions on the inspector's report? Seeing none, if I could have a motion to adopt. Moved by Charlie, seconded by Dave. All in favor? Thank you. Other business. Dave?
Mr. Chair, last Wednesday evening, I attended the graduation of the Citizens Academy at the OPP headquarters. Constable Sanchuk was the MC of that event and coordinated that. I believe he's done that for the last 7 or 8 years in that range. He indicated during the presentations that it was likely one of the best classes that he had gone through this academy. There were approximately 35 graduates from that academy, and they all received certificates. The inspector and the staff sergeants were present. Ed Sanchuk served cake. What sort of caught my eye was the age range of the attendees, from people likely in their very early 20s to people likely maybe close to 70. Some made it known that they were possibly interested in joining the auxiliary or going on to join the OPP, but certainly a wide range of male, female, and there seemed to be a very good attendance from what I understand for the entire 8-week time frame. So I think Constable Sanchuk deserves credit, and certainly it was nice to see management at that graduation.
Yeah, and thank you on behalf of the rest of us for attending, because the rest of us had conflicts that night, and we were glad that you stepped up to the plate and went. And it was good to have a board representative there, and delighted to hear that it has been such a productive class and that it carries on. It's a very worthwhile program. Jim?
Mr. Chair, do we do just one of those academies per year, or? Yeah, okay.
Any other business? Question period. Monty?
Good morning, everyone. I have a question for Staff Sergeant Varga. This device you're describing that's shot from a police cruiser onto a suspect vehicle to avoid a chase, have you folks given it a name?
It's Star Chase.
Star Chase. And would it be fair to say that attaching this tracking device to a suspect vehicle is shot out of a gun or shot out of a cannon? What do you call the device that delivers it?
I wouldn't describe it as a gun or a cannon. It is deployed using compressed air.
Okay. And you mentioned the distance there, Staff Sergeant, 14 to 21 meters?
Feet.
Feet, okay.
Afraid I'm old school.
I did not catch the units there.
And if you'd like further information, then I can put you in charge or put you in contact with the Highway Safety Division, which is
Right.
in charge of the pilot project.
Interesting. So is it already in circulation in Norfolk, or is it coming?
We haven't received it yet in Norfolk. There's one cruiser being deployed for 3 detachments.
Right.
And we haven't came up on our turn yet.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Okay. Very interesting stuff. And sir, I didn't catch your name. I'm Monty Sonnenberg with the Reformer. You are?
Staff Sergeant John Fashion.
Okay.
ASHIH.
Okay. Thank you. Pleased to meet you. And Staff Sergeant Varga, would I be able to get a snapshot of your speed spy report with regard to St. Andrew Street in Port Dover?
Yeah, if you give me your email, I can email you.
I could just take a picture of it
Okay.
with my camera. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. If there are no other questions, if we could have a motion to move to closed session. Moved by Jim, seconded by Dave. All in favor? Thank you. I guess you're going. I guess you're leaving. I do.